Happy Monday, everyone. We can finally say goodbye to our dynamic system that brought the multi-day severe weather outbreak as that is finally pushing off into the East Coast. We had a tornado warning well south into southern Florida this morning, and there could have been a little brief spin up tornado, but you can see the dry air is already moving back in, and now the system is just bringing some heavier rains across upstate New York, back into Vermont, New Hampshire, portions of Massachusetts there, getting into Maine, and that system will continue to move off the East Coast, and we can say goodbye to that, but man, the aftermath is real, folks. It was, in fact, a multi-day severe weather outbreak, and we were seeing this well in advance of this system to give you plenty lead time. And you can see there's been 17 states that were, in fact, affected. These are the tornado warnings per state. And currently, right now, 304 tornado warnings came out of that multi-day severe weather outbreak. And this is what the map looked like, folks. It was just lit up across the board. Those areas in yellow, that is a severe thunderstorm warning. I think we're up to over 640 of those. And those are those tornado warnings. And yes, we've eclipsed over 300 tornado warnings. Now, of course, the National Weather Service is still doing ongoing surveys. I think we're at last count around 80 confirmed tornadoes, and we're probably going to end up somewhere in the vicinity of over 100 plus with this severe weather outbreak, as it'll take another likely week or two before all the surveys are done, before they can put the final outcome on what unfolded across this event. So that has now moved off, and now so what's to come, right? So here's the setup on the vorticity map, and of course we're watching yet another system that will be coming ashore off California, and we've seen this, and we're actually seeing another one that's already forming behind that one south of into the Aleutian Islands. And we're going to be seeing these dynamic systems just kind of race across the country. We have a very fast moving jet stream, and that's been the nature of the beast with these storms. It's just been extremely fast moving, and they've been packing a lot of wind. Of course, we had all the fires just last week that's still ongoing in portions of Texas and New Mexico, and of course Oklahoma, devastating fires out there, but the winds are going to be kicking up again. So we do have high wind warnings and watches in place. We've got red flag warnings in place, and we've got high winds are going to be approaching those same areas, drought stricken areas across New Mexico, back into areas of Colorado, there's into western areas of Kansas, western Oklahoma, back into the Texas panhandle again, further west into West Texas, Oklahoma, back into Kansas. Just very high windy conditions. And yes, we do have those high wind watches and warnings in place, wind advisories across Los Angeles, back into Vegas. Those will extend and push a well eastbound, setting up across the middle part of the country. This area has just been kind of bone dry. And yes, we could be looking at widespread red flag warnings again unfolding for Monday and to Tuesday, really all week long across this same area. We do have a little bit of cold air to talk about too, and we'll have another dynamic system that will be coming in, and that could squeeze out more precipitation, likely in the form of snow. So it'll start breaking out in portions of Kansas. Those are winter storm watches in place already. This likely starts on Tuesday night, heading into Wednesday, and then shifts northeast, heading all the way up into areas of Minnesota and Wisconsin. But the fire risk is going to be a huge concern. So they've got a widespread risk today of critical fire danger, and it just amplifies even further as we go into Tuesday with yet another extreme risk. You saw what happened last, what was it, Friday, with that dust storm that unfolded across West Texas in the Panhandle, and then all the fires that broke out of the extremely dry air across this region. The humidity values are insanely low in the teens, and if not single digits, and a lot of places just adds that fuel to the fire, especially with those 50 and 65 mile per hour wind gusts that's likely going to unfold today and going into tomorrow. And that's why we have the extreme fire risk again for far west Texas, Midland, Lubbock, those areas in Amarillo into the Panhandle. Be on high alert. That critical fire risk extends all the way into Oklahoma City again, and fire watch all the way into Tulsa. So yes, we have yet another dynamic system that comes in. This is likely not nearly as intense the one we just dealt with, but it's still going to be plenty strong as we see yet another little dip in the jet stream coming across the areas of the Four Corners. That's going to be swinging into the desert Southwest. I mean, there's just no moisture to work with. All the layers of the atmosphere are just bone dry. So by the time the precipitation comes back into play, the system's already gone. So there's nothing to really tap into. And so we're going to be seeing these same areas start getting moisture starved again. But once it reaches further into the plains, it's going to be adding a surface low. And that is going to be enough lift and dynamics. And the cold air is going to come in. And that's why we do have the snow that's going to unfold across Kansas, areas of Minnesota, then swinging across Wisconsin, and then we'll just further south is just all the high winds and the critical fire risk. It's unfortunately going to unfold for Tuesday. So there's the snow. I mean, look at the tight isobars. This is still a formidable low. That's 985, folks. That's insanely low for this time of year. And those pressure gradients are going to be extreme. That's indicative of some very high winds. And yes, with the snow, we could be talking blizzard-like conditions again unfolding for Kansas, back into areas of Nebraska. Those get into northwestern portions of Iowa, southern areas of Wisconsin, and that will likely swing further north and into areas of Wisconsin. And then, of course, further south, it's just dry air, right? You just got extremely dry air. That's why the fire risk is a huge concern. But as this rapidly moves off to the east again, these will be moving 50, 55, 60, some 65 miles an hour as this jet stream just kind of races across. It will likely set up more of a damaging wind threat as we swing further into Wednesday. First originating further north around the surface low, and then swinging further south across Illinois, back into Indiana, as well as into western Kentucky, western Tennessee, further south into Mississippi. They saw their fair share of storms just over the weekend. These aren't going to be nearly intense, but this is the last thing they need with these fast-moving systems and more damaging winds likely to unfold across this region. So the setup on the surface map kind of looks like this. As we head into Wednesday night, that dynamic system will be racing northeast. Of course, we'll have snow on the northwest side of there. Look at the tight isobars again. Again, just very high windy conditions. Another windy week ahead for a good part of the country. There's the damaging wind threat on the fishtail further south. And of course, further north to the northwest of that area of low, that's where we have all the heavier snows and likely some blizzard-like conditions unfolding. And we have a decent cool front for this time of year. So we're going into, this is your March 20th. In fact, it's actually going to be the official first day of spring, likely officially starts at 4:01 a.m. So by the time you wake up on Thursday morning, we've got those cooler anomalies filtering well south of covering a good part of the southern plains and even areas of the southeast. It's not really going to feel like spring. It's going to feel like at least a little bit more winter-like, as the temperatures will be below freezing across a good part of the country, back behind that quick cold blast of air. So heading into Thursday morning, these were actual temperatures. We've got widespread 20s across the board, across the Intermountain West, through the north central plains, as well as the central plains, and even further south into Oklahoma. We'll actually experience a freeze there into Oklahoma City. And even further south, you might even be dealing with some frost advisories, frost areas, seeing frost. So those people that did, in fact, wanted to plant early, you will be needing to cover those plants on your Wednesday night heading into Thursday morning with this quick shot of colder air. But to the north of there, and as this squall line moves through, then we're going to be looking at some more heavier rains that will push across into the East Coast. So the same areas that are likely impacting this morning are going to be impacted again for this Thursday setup as the atmosphere kind of regenerates itself. So this will again just be another fast moving system. We're probably not looking at for any like flooding rains or anything like with this system, but still some instability and likely some increased wind gust and some heavier rains as this racing across through the Carolinas back into Pennsylvania again. They saw some storms yesterday. They did in fact upgrade to an enhanced risk there into western Pennsylvania with that storm system yesterday. And then we'll continue to race off this. So by the time we head into Friday, look what happens on the backside. That's just, again, tight isobars, just indicative of more heavier winds that will be moving across. So as this system races across and leaving some snow in the higher elevations across the Northeast, we'll be looking at another system that will be moving across the Four Corners region. It's likely snow in the higher elevations. But again, it's going to be moisture starved across the middle part of the country. So what you're left with, again, is the fire risk, red flag warnings, critical fire dangers, likely some blowing dust. All that just wraps up again heading into your Friday time frame into the Saturday. So we are going to be expecting another little short wave that will be, moving in. So we have a surface low, we've got the systems, but any type of system, you've got to have some sort of lift and precipitation to work with. Well, there's not much, right? So this area is just kind of bone dry. So yes, by the time, because these systems are just so fast, by the time these systems kind of regenerate and recoup itself, it's already moved off. So the areas that stay dry remain dry. The areas that will get all the storms will remain getting all the storms until these systems kind of slow down. These will be ending up in some of the similar places, unfortunately. So as we move into your Saturday afternoon heading into Sunday, there's the surface low down to 1,003. So that's a formidable low. But notice, where's the precipitation? It's just not there, right? This area is just bone dry. You got humidity values in the single digits. You've got dew points crazy low. It takes a while to moisten up all the layers of the atmosphere. So you definitely have the short wave coming through. There's just no lift and there's nothing to tap into. There's just moisture starved. So it will remain on the dry side. And that's the reason why the Climate Prediction Center has, when they put out that seasonal outlook, they kind of saw these systems just kind of racing across. So these areas across the Four Corners regions into the desert Southwest will remain. That drought will likely start to persist. And of course, the areas that, in yellow here are just missing out on these systems into New Mexico, portions of Colorado, western Texas, western Oklahoma, western Kansas as well. Back into the Panhandle, we'll see that drought unfortunately start to deepen as we get deeper into the spring. But look what happens once they move east of 35, right? Moisture comes back, right? So this area is not as moisture starved, so it's easy to regenerate and group itself. And so we're going to be seeing more instability come back into play, likely east of I-35. This is during the late afternoon, evening time frame on Sunday. This is almost about a week out now. So this would be your late weekend system likely starting to come to fruition again. And yes, right now, the Storm Prediction Center went ahead and issued a day 7 slight risk for more severe storms possibly unfolding across some of these areas east of I-35 outside of Dallas, southeastern Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas, portions of Louisiana and Mississippi again. So we could be looking at yet another formidable system. So overall, the breakdown looks like this. So here's your precipitation over the next 7 days. We'll see steady systems come in off the west coast, likely producing some heavier rains along the west coast. And then once you move inland, not as much. A lot of this will be in the form of snow. and this moves around. We'll have surface lows developing around the Rockies. Western Kansas will likely dump some heavier snows and some higher totals up there across Iowa, Wisconsin. And then, of course, further south with these systems likely east of I-35. So west of there likely remains moisture starved and drought stricken. And unfortunately, those high winds will precede those fire risk as well out there. But then we'll have to watch these systems as they move east of I-35. But we're not looking like for crazy rain amounts. We're just looking for some higher instability in these fast moving systems, and the snow kind of looks like this over the next 7 days with those systems coming in across the Intermountain West. And then we'll have that surface low that develops in Kansas and Nebraska that lifts northeast and spreading some decent amounts of snow across that region, and likely some 6 to 10 inch totals before all it's said and done, heading into Tuesday night, going into Wednesday. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.